You're listening to a Brain Stew Fresh Fright Review.
What's up, creeps, and welcome to a brand new episode of Brain Stew. I'm Justin, and this week the boys are off on adventures, their own adventures, and I am once again joined by epic film guys, Alum, and fan favorite, the god of podcasting himself. I'd like to welcome the man himself, LoySauce.
Well, hello there, everyone. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all that.
You gotta have more energy than that. They're like rabid fans. Like, they haven't heard your voice, I think, since Top Gun Maverick or some shit.
Oh my god.
Fucking A, dude. You're back on the show, filling in here, and it is the Christmas season, and I've been happy so far since we've made our return after our hiatus, if you will, to be talking about more holiday horror. Our last review was The Mean One. Y'all know, if you already listened to that, how we felt about that one.
I dodged a bullet there.
Yes, you most definitely did by not watching that one. But this week we're talking about another holiday horror film that last week was released in limited theaters, and on Friday I believe it was directly released on Shudder for streaming.
That's where I
Joe
watched
Begos' Yes, Christmas, Bloody Christmas. Brian.
Yes.
It would appear this movie on paper, per se, would be, it seems like it'd be tailor-made for the both of us. And mostly, like, for most horror fans, right? Like, robot Santa killing people, it just sounds like that's the best way to bring in holiday cheer.
Well, I know that I always look to Black Christmas. You turn me on to Silent Night, Deadly Night. So horror fans, they like a little horror in their holidays. And this is a horror, all right, but it's not the kind that brings you cheer. It's the kind that puts a lump of coal in your stocking. I'm sure I'm the first ever person to be reviewing this movie to compare it to a lump of coal, but that's how I feel. That's how I feel this movie is. It's just a lump of coal in your stocking.
Dude, I'll say this much right now. Like, within the first 15 to 20 minutes of it, I wish that I had a coal-filled stocking in front of me that I could have taken and smashed into my face 50 times. That's how I felt by watching the majority of this movie. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you liked this movie, prepare yourself. Spoilers are coming. We're just going to talk about this thing all the way through. So yes, Christmas, Bloody Christmas.
Also, Joe Begos, if you're listening to this, you got talent, you got ambition, you need someone to write your scripts, buddy.
Ooh.
It's not working out for you.
Damn, man. LoySauce hasn't been on in many, many, many months, and he's already digging in hard on this motherfucker. But yeah, so this movie, in terms of like a description of what the movie is, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's Christmas Eve, and Tori just wants to get drunk and party. I mean, who the fuck doesn't, though? But when a robotic Santa Claus at a nearby toy store goes haywire and begins a rampant killing spree through her small town, she is forced into a battle for survival. Okay. So the movie begins, and this character, Tori Toombs, played by Riley Dandy, I think she was on a Netflix show and some other small stuff, is walking into her job, which is a record store. And she is greeted by a friend, and she sees her coworker, Robbie Reynolds. And it's like, you know, it's Christmas season. They're about to close up. And I get it. I've been that guy where you're like, man, let's just get fucking smashed. You know, the lights are bright. You hear the holiday music on the radio, and you're like, let's just really indulge in this. Brian, the main issue I have right off the bat with this is the utter lack of respect for the audience. I feel like these characters are immediately right off the bat the most obnoxious people. I liken it to being at a dive bar sober and having to sit next to the most annoying, obnoxious, belligerent, and foul human beings on the planet. I mean, I literally could not stand either of these people, and I literally have spent so much of my life in the music industry, playing at shows. I played in so many different metal bands. So I did the dive bar scene, I did the music scene, and then doing the horror movie scene as well, going to conventions and events and shit. I understand the perspective of who these characters are supposed to be, but I feel like they are over the top stereotypes of who the people actually are.
Well, you know me, Justin. I'm no prude, obviously, but there comes a point where the swearing just becomes so aggressive that you cross the line of being desensitized to it over into the territory of being just annoyed by it. I read something online. Someone actually was nice enough. I consider this while I was watching it, but someone was kind enough to make a tally.
I was going to say, did they count the fucks?
And I forget exactly how many, but it was close to 500. For a 90-minute movie, that is inexcusable. Inexcusable. It means that okay. I don't know if a screenplay existed for this movie because the dialogue feels very improvised. But one of two things. Either Joe Begos wrote, close to 500 fucks into a screenplay, and that means he has no creativity at all when it comes to dialogue. Or secondly, the actors that he chose, he directed them to cuss as often as possible. It's literally every other word. So both of those things are bad.
Yes. And honestly, and I need to say this right at the forefront here, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you know you are listening to one of the most foul-mouthed, obscene movie podcasts that have ever lived. I mean, we've been around for almost 8 years now, and there have been episodes where we've said the F-bomb like 40 times maybe in an episode. The point is, we're not characters in a movie that are supposed to be likable. You just want to hear us talk about movies. And I liken this to, a lot of people are claiming this is a great throwback to grindhouse horror movies and a throwback to 80s slashers, low-budget movies, B movies.
I would love to know what movie they saw.
Well, here's the thing, Brian. There are a lot of movies that I like with unlikable characters. But at the same time, usually they're silly, stupid, or there's something about them that you find charming enough to be able to watch them until they get killed. You know what I mean? Here, I want to see them die in the first 5 minutes. Before the credits even roll and you see the title of the movie, I counted at least almost 20 fucks. And I was like, if you're trying to get me invested in your characters, this is the wrong way to go about it. And yes, I am aware that there are some people that speak this way that are that foul-mouthed. And, even with, the last Scream movie, Scream 5, I complained about that, where characters were saying the F-bomb way too much. It was important back in the 80s and 90s when you would get an F-bomb or a bullshit or any kind of cursing where it was impactful because you didn't hear it a lot. So it would be a moment of comedy, or it would lighten the moment,
I've always said precision strikes.
Yes.
Profanity is much more effective when you use it sparingly. If you use it too often, it comes across as you have nothing interesting to say. And that goes for these characters who literally, it starts off as... you said it yourself, basically a podcast. You have almost 40 minutes of these characters talking about, music and movies. And I have to say, some of the takes here are some of the worst I've ever heard when it comes to horror movies. Our final girl, the one that we're supposed to like and relate to, prefers Pet Sematary 2 and Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2 to the originals. And for this alone, she deserves to die.
This was intentional, right? I guarantee you, Well, actually, I can't guarantee shit. I have no idea what he was thinking when he wrote this script. But to me, it came off as he's trying to convey these horror fans that literally sit on Twitter arguing with people why a shit movie is better than the original or why this sequel is better than the other. It is discussions that are had in the horror community and every, community regarding film in general. But I feel like he was like trying to say, hey, see, she's irreverent here. She's different. She's got a hot take for this shit.
Yeah, it's almost like he was trying to poke the bear a little bit and create conversation in the horror community just based on that alone.
Oh, and it did too. I saw many tweets where people were championing the movie simply because of the fact that our lead character preferred Pet Sematary 2 over the original. And I like Pet Sematary 2. I like that movie. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Edward Furlong's in it. Good old John Connor himself.
Well, it's a fun horror movie. There's plenty wrong with it, but you can still enjoy a movie.
Of course there is.
I mean, you can still enjoy a movie that's underappreciated or, gets a bad reputation. But to me, having just these pointless conversations that don't relate to anything about the story, it doesn't really give you insight into the characters either. And the characters shout at each other nonstop for, like I said, about 40 minutes. The first half of the movie, practically, while you're just desperately waiting for the killer Santa to show up to murder these assholes.
Well, you know my 15-minute rule, right? If they were really going to go by the playbook of 80 slashers, someone would have died in the first 15 minutes, and I counted that shit, and no one was dead yet.
See, here's what I thought the movie was going to be. I thought it was going to be, and, fuck me for thinking that, the movie would be entertaining in any way. But I thought that so you have this toy store robotic Santa that goes haywire, as you said. I thought it would kind of be like he goes through the town and comes across various Christmas scenes, people decorating for Christmas or, kids leaving out milk and cookies for Santa, and he shows up and creates mayhem. And you'll see multiple deaths throughout the film, almost like a slasher film should do. And instead, it decides to have us be trapped in the company of these detestable characters. And then, suddenly the killer Santa shows up, murders a few people in some admittedly, kind of cool and impressive ways. And then the movie decides that it wants to be Terminator now. And then it just does the Terminator. And the movie ends.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, it's really, when you look at this concept, when you look at this premise, you think, oh, that's cool. And honestly, we're starved for festive horror films that are fun and brutal. I mean, a brilliant one that comes to mind that you all talked about on Brain Stew was the 2006 Black Christmas remake. That's not a high art masterpiece. I mean, that movie's trashy, but it's fun. And it delivers exactly what you want.
It's super fun. There are unlikable characters in that movie, but you come to really connect with them in a strange way. It captures the essence of the holiday. It has Christmas music. All of the actors are all nice to look at in the movie.
Sure.
So just saying, not that the ones here aren't. A lot of good-looking people in this movie as well. But that movie, it just really goes for the gusto. It goes for the throw. It just goes all the way with the idea. And not to get too deep into that movie, but it's always fun to watch. It doesn't frustrate you. And for me, I just really wanted to have a fun time with this. And
after hearing, I'm sorry to interrupt, but after hearing so many people say this movie kicks ass, this is going to be part of my yearly Christmas rotation, people were comparing it to the likes of Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Black Christmas. And I just want to ask, what were those people smoking when they watched this?
Well, it's very interesting.
Were they as drunk out of their minds as the characters in this movie were?
Maybe he was thinking when he was writing this movie that this would be the perfect take a shot every time someone says fuck, and then the person will be dead by the end of the movie from alcohol poisoning.
In the first 10 minutes they'd be dead. It's absurd how much language is in this movie, and I really do think it smacks of lack of creativity and lack of the ability to write good characters that you can root for. And this is exactly how I felt, by the way, of Joe Begos' previous films. This is now the third film of his that I've watched. I've hated all three. And I think I'm done watching his movies. If he comes out with a movie...
Okay, so you hated all three, though, but was this the worst of the bunch that you disliked? Because I haven't seen VFW.
I want to say I disliked Bliss the most. Bliss was, a film about this painter. She's going through a creative block. She doesn't know what to do. And then she takes this drug that essentially turns her into a vampire. And she spends most of the movie sulking around with these sunglasses on, screaming at people, and just being the worst character in any horror movie ever made.
Another asshole character movie?
Yeah, she just is so toxic a character and so barbed and hateful, and you feel nothing towards her. And that's another film where the language just gets in the way of any dialogue in the film is just peppered with all this pointless. And I don't want to sound like someone who is a prude, or like Siskel and Ebert back in the day complained about violence in movies and language in movies. I don't want to come across as that person, because if a director has a particular style of something that he wants to do in his movies, I'm not trying to say that he can't, but to me it just comes across as lazy and puerile.
People give Rob Zombie shit, but this script felt like Rob Zombie wasted and on steroids. You know what I mean in terms of the dialogue.
You and I talked about this movie a little bit, and I compared Joe Begos to Rob Zombie a little bit, and I think Rob Zombie is a much better filmmaker than Joe Begos. And if you knew my opinions of Rob Zombie, you know that is not a comparison that I make lightly.
Yeah, because we all know you loved The Munsters as much as I did.
Fuck that movie.
See, listen to how foul you are right now.
I know.
Maybe you should have been one of the leads in the movie, Brian.
Maybe I should have. It's rubbing off on me, I guess. But no. I respect Rob Zombie to a certain extent, but I do feel like, despite his talent, he can make a movie that looks like a movie, and relatively, we watch a lot of trash. You and I.
Yeah.
And, Rob Zombie's movies have a certain amount of professionalism to them, even when it's clear that he doesn't have the budget to make a film on, the caliber of The Devil's Rejects or even House of a Thousand Corpses. The Munsters was rough, but that movie had somewhat of a visual style. It was colorful. It was interesting to look at, I guess. Anyway, so my point is, Rob Zombie seems to be a competent filmmaker, but he doesn't really seem to have respect for his audience. It feels like his films are just so aggressive and almost like daring to be liked, or daring to be embraced by the horror community in spite of itself. That's how I feel about Joe Begos. It feels like he's just a provocateur rather than an auteur. And, this movie has somewhat of a visual style.
100%.
His movies always have like kind of the neon blasted. It looks like he just set up a key light and put a red gel on it and pointed it at the actors and was like, "There's your lighting for the scene."
I dig that. I mean, a lot of people now are going for that aesthetic, but you can tell the filmmakers that know how to use it wisely. And I really did. There were a couple shots in this movie that I have to champion that I really enjoyed. I mean, the third act looks really cool. I mean, if I was recommending to someone the other day, they were like, "I really want to watch it, but I know you didn't like it at all, and you were shitting all over it." And I was like, "Dude, just skip past like the first act. Go to when the first kill happens, and if you watch from there, it's not nearly as bad." And I want to go back to what we were talking about in the beginning about the two characters. I don't dislike the idea at all of having these characters like normal record store people that love talking about music and movies. Like, those are the people I hang out with. You know what I mean? But I just wanted to like them. I wanted to feel like those were my friends that I would hang out with at the bar. If I hung out with these people, I would have gotten up from my stool and left. You know,
the thing is, like, these two actors, they have chemistry.
They do.
You can tell that, like, even when they first start talking and you're not sure what their relationship is, you can sense, like, are they gonna fuck? Like, there's something between them. There's a tension, and
you wanted them to fuck, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, as the night goes on and you see them, okay, now they're going to the bar. Now they're going, he's gonna take her, like, he's gonna give her a ride home. Then they make it to her place where she says, my sister and her boyfriend are dead asleep. And then they proceed to blast heavy metal music and scream at the top of their lungs. Disrespectful and annoying, by the way. And then the sister and her boyfriend don't wake up. Like, they don't hear that this is happening. And they don't wake up until she runs into the room and wakes them up and says, there's a killer Santa outside. Anyway, I found
before that, though, I mean, I have to say, the scene before that, I know really wet your fucking whistle, because I know how much you love small children being in danger. And not just small children being in danger in movies, but small children being in danger in movies that are Christmas movies.
Well, of course. I mean, I appreciate that there was a child death in this movie, even though we don't necessarily see the full impact. We do see Santa swing an axe and blood spray, and that was nice.
I liked that.
I liked the scene, especially because the kid's reaction is so genuine when he's opening up the present. He goes, "Oh, clothes." I felt that.
Dude, I legitimately laughed out loud at that. I'm not even going to lie to you.
The movie could have used way, 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 way more of that. It needed that Christmas spirit. The thing about this movie is that it takes place on Christmas Eve, sure. There are Christmas lights and decorations, and there is a robotic Santa Claus. But aside from that, this movie has no interest in giving us the imagery and the spirit of Christmas, something that Silent Night, Deadly Night does exceedingly well. I have my problems with that movie. It's not perfect. I didn't really like it until...
I forced you to like it. I forced you to watch it over and over again. Hopefully, eventually you'll come around on Christmas Evil as well. That's another one I hope that you'll continuously watch until you like it.
I've only seen that once, and I thought it was fine at the time, but I'll give it another chance for sure. I'll never watch this piece of shit again. But so you needed more moments like that, like someone baking Christmas cookies, or a couple ice skating, or you needed more of that. And instead, again, we're just watching these two people drink themselves to death. I was getting concerned at the amount of alcohol that these people were ingesting. I'm like,
I mean, I won't even lie. I've had a very high tolerance for a long, long time. I'm not currently on the bottle anymore. But when I would have a very high tolerance. But whiskey, which is what they were drinking, is so dangerous. It shit is deadly. And they just kept drinking and drinking and drinking. I will say that the sex scene part was cool. That was well shot. And I was like, okay, great. They're going to... And for once, it was actually a dude pleasuring a woman.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, these are two, a little bit different.
These are two very attractive people. I guess it's nice to see them make it, because the tension was going on for so long. You were just waiting for them to, explore each other's bodies. And when it finally happened, you were like, okay, good for them. But you don't like them. You don't feel any kind of warmth or passion towards them, because they're awful people. And so that it didn't necessarily make any difference, because one of them is dead 2 scenes later.
Well, we don't know anything about them, and
right.
I don't want to sit on the characters, these two characters forever, but we don't know anything about them at all, other than that they both work at a record store and they like these certain movies and they like this certain kind of music. There's no real backstory.
You made an excellent comparison between Tori and Sarah Connor, because this movie so desperately wants to be the Terminator that it tries having Tori be the Sarah Connor character. And I would like for you to talk a little bit about the comparison between them. In fact, the fact that Begos wants you to have that emotional moment at the end where she's kicking ass and you're like, yes, like she's fighting back against this machine, and you just don't feel anything. And in fact, you're just begging for the movie to end at that point, because it just keeps going on forever.
Well, honestly, yeah. I was hoping for a surprise ending and having the robot win. And then it would open it up for a sequel. And then I mean, maybe I would watch the sequel because then it would get rid of these characters. But no, I mean, if it clearly this movie is a huge love letter, or if you want to call it a ripoff, I mean,
it's a
I'm
ripoff.
all down. I'm totally down with the Robot Santa movie. You know what? Not enough people appreciate the first Terminator. The first Terminator is my personal favorite of the entire franchise, and it's in my top 5 movies of all time. So, you know, that down, dirty, gritty, low budget slasher horror sci-fi vibe. I mean, it was present here. The difference between this character and Sarah Connor's the girl next door. She's just trying to get through life. She's got a shitty job as a waitress. Kid puts an ice cream cone in her pocket. Her date for Friday night to go to the, you know, to have dinner. The dude ditches her. She goes out to the, you know, have a piece of pizza by herself, and she's just going to go catch a movie on her own. Normal, nice girl that gets thrust into this crazy situation and then has to deal with this crazy guy telling her that he's from the future. He was sent there. You know the story. I don't have to go into it. But you care for her because she's vulnerable. She's relatable. She's likable. And nothing about this character, to me, is. I've dated a lot of girls that act like this. Believe me. Being in the music industry, playing in metal bands, and hanging out with horror people for as many years as I have been, I've known a lot of foul-mouthed chicks. I have nothing wrong with that. My wife can be a foul-mouthed chick, but there's a difference between... There's that fine line between the two things. There's belligerent and obnoxious, and then there's like, okay, you're cool. And this just crossed that line. So, to get moving with the movie, at her house that she lives at with her sister and her sister's boyfriend, I cut you off earlier when you were mentioning this, they don't even know what's going on. They're woken up out of bed. She's screaming at them. She's being a complete bitch to both of them, especially her her sister's boyfriend.
Yeah, he goes to fetch the keys from the bedroom or something. There's something that I forget exactly what happens, but he's going to do something, and Tori is just she like makes a nasty comment and like rolls her eyes, and yeah, it's just, I mean, again, this is the character that we want to see through to the end, you know, in theory, but I just don't understand why we allowed such toxic behavior from our protagonist. But at any rate, continue, please. No,
so after this moment, her sister and her sister's boyfriend are basically just, you know, fodder to be killed off immediately. And the kills for them are not very creative or interesting or anything like that. And the dude that just, you know, ate her out gets pulled through a window. And then we have our first real major cool kill. Because before this, there was a couple fucking in the toy store, which I also was like, okay, that's fine.
It's from the point of view of the robot, but it's shot terribly.
Yeah, it felt like a video game to me. But those are characters we don't care about either, and both of those characters were also obnoxious and unlikable. But we have our first major kill here. So I told you earlier in the review, spoiler full with this, but the character of Robbie, who literally just, I mean, he didn't get laid himself, but he had some contact there. He gets axed. He's dead. And I think from this moment forward, Brian, if I understand the film correctly from my viewpoint, this is where we're supposed to really connect with our lead, Tori, because she's seen this guy that just literally licked her pussy get murdered in front of her. And now we're supposed to be like, that's terrible. Oh my God. Now we suddenly want her to see her be victorious against this robot Santa. But it doesn't happen that way at all.
No, I think if he had actually put work into the screenplay and made these characters people that we liked, then one of two things could have happened. You could have killed him off and it would have been devastating. We would have felt for her.
You would have felt an impact.
Or you could have had them both survive until the end and have it be a happy ending, which also would have been nice. But instead, neither happens. Instead, these are, again, just miserable people that we don't care about. One of them dies, we feel nothing. one of them survives, we feel nothing. So,
yeah. And then moving forward, I mean, there's not really much else that impactful that happens in the movie, but this is my favorite part of the movie after that kill happens, because we got all that out of the way and we know what we're in for. We're just in for more killing. And she gets taken back to the police station. Of course, we're in another one of those generic situations where no one believes her because she's saying a robot Santa killed these people.
Which is in every movie.
And then, I mean, it's not like the Terminator in the sense that the robot Santa Claus comes into the police station to start killing cops, because there's only 2 cops on duty. But
that also may have been a bridge too far in ripping off the Terminator.
I mean, it is a scene where the robot Santa drives an ambulance to the police station. A pretty cool explosion happens. I looked like it was, CGI explosion, but it was really well done.
I actually don't know. I thought the explosions and the fire looked pretty real and pretty practical. I could be wrong. If it was CGI fire, I would say that it's very impressive.
Extremely well done. I mean, I questioned myself whether it was real or not, because the explosion at the end, I was like, oh man, this actually looks real. And
it looked expensive. I think Begos shows ambition here. I feel like if he were given a sizable budget, he could direct, and notice I say direct and not write, a pretty, kick-ass action movie or something, because he shows a little ambition here. I think at this point you're way past caring about anything that happens. And because it goes on for so long, and because you're not connected to anything that's happening, you're just kind of left shrugging your shoulders when you should be pumping your fists and you should be cheering. But I was quite tickled to see what looked like actual explosions and actual cars running into each other, and stunts, and I mean, it's cool. All that stuff was wonderfully done. I'm not gonna, as much as the movie did not work for me and I can't recommend it, there were some cool spots in the movie where I was actually legitimately impressed by it. I think the third act really is the most powerful of the whole movie. It is the part that rips off the Terminator the absolute most, but I think that's really what he was trying to do. So I also feel... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, man.
I also feel that the reason why the third act works as well as it does is because it actually embraces its concept of a killer robot Santa. Before that, it just seems like a dude wandering around in a Santa suit.
Well, it is just a dude. It's an actor named Abraham Benrubi. Apparently, Begos did not want to go with a stuntman. He wanted to go with an actor. And boy, does he act his ass off in terms of motion and movement, totally mimicking what Arnold Schwarzenegger and Robert Patrick had done in their previous roles as, killer cyborgs in the Terminator movies. His eyes, the way the eyes move first, then the head moves, and he's more robotic, though. He's more RoboCop in this movie than he is Terminator in terms of his actual movements. But that was the thing I was going to mention to you. The poster looks so cool. I mean, the green glowing eyes, and I really was just hoping early on that the skin would be removed and we would actually get kind of like Arnold in Terminator and Terminator 2 when half his face is ripped off, the skin and the flesh, and then you'd have robot face and like a green eye or something that would add this awesome iconic imagery for this character in the movie. And instead we literally get what you can clearly tell is just a dude in a Santa suit. You know what I mean? Like it didn't go full B movie with it until the end. And we might as well get there now. So the character that we're following throughout this thing ends up going back to where we started in the beginning, the record store that she manages. And she's battling with this killer Santa. And eventually, Brian, that does happen, where you start to see like this green glowing like gear coming out of his throat. And then, by the last few minutes, it's literally just a robot that you see. And it is mimicking exactly what you see from the original Terminator, where it's like it's just a torso with arms reaching for her and constantly still trying to come to kill her. And it goes on for entirely too long. It just drags and drags. And I get it. They really wanted to showcase that prop because it looked really cool and it was practical and they did a lot with it to make it look and move a certain way. But I literally just wanted it to end by that point. And there's one thing if you're going to homage, a movie or, rip off a movie. And a lot of people I saw were really championing the music. The score by Steve Moore, for the most part, is pretty much what you hear in every other horror movie now. A throwback, retro synthwave styled score. But at the end here, Brian, he is almost beat for beat taking Brad Fiedel's score from The Terminator and just redoing it with slightly different notes. It's literally the same thing.
I'm telling you, he was told to do it that way by Joe Begos because he wanted to make The Terminator. And, this is a trend because VFW was basically Assault on Precinct 13 set in a bar. It was literally, he just decided, he woke up one day and thought, I'm going to remake Assault on Precinct 13. Won't be able to get the rights, so I'll just change a few things around and we'll call it a day.
Well, you know that with this movie, he originally came up with this as an idea for a remake of the 1984 movie Silent Night, Deadly Night, but just suggesting the murders could be by a Terminator-esque android. And of course, the rights holders were like, nah, we're not doing that. That's straying way too far from the original movie. So he continued to develop it as this thing. And I'm actually glad. But it's interesting to hear people on, horror film Twitter or Instagram be like, he's the next, he should be the guy to do the next Silent Night, Deadly Night. It's like, dude, he already tried and they said no. But I'm actually glad that he made this his own thing, his own original idea, even though it's not really original at all. But I think all the robot stuff at the end, for me at least, and I know for you, we love practical effects. We love old school cheesy science fiction and horror movies. And I think that he really hit the nail on the head with the robot stuff. I just wish that it had more impact. You know what I mean? And I wish that we got to see it doing more killing, more cool kills. I mean, and I definitely talked about this in our review of The Mean One, and this is going to come up all the time. But we were so spoiled by Terrifier 2. I mean, that's the bar. It's set so high. So anything you see from here on, it's going to have to try really hard to have that level of impact with the kills. You know what I mean? It went as far as it possibly could. And the stuff that we saw here was cool. It was good. It was practical. It was overall well done. And I was impressed by most of it, even though none of it was like jump out of your seat exciting. But all that stuff for the most part worked. By the end of the movie, I just felt unfulfilled and like, okay, well, I see what you tried to do there, but I feel that you failed. And it is, I shouldn't say it's surprising to me that so many people liked this because, as you said so well put earlier on in the episode, people are hungry for this. You know what I mean? People, especially me. I mean, I love the Christmas season because of the nostalgia, and I love watching the movies. And most of those movies are horror Christmas movies. Let's watch Elves, dude. I mean, it's literally one of the best movies ever made, even though you can't find it on Blu-ray because it's not available. But
please, someone put Elves on Blu-ray. Come on, we're all waiting very patiently. I have
to champion this because I don't know if you noticed when we screened Krampus the other night for Terror Tuesday at Alamo Drafthouse Ashburn, the pre-show. Did you see the pre-show had clips from Elves peppered throughout? I kept going up to Stephen N and being like, "You need to make Brian force you to watch this movie."
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like there are people out there who are praising this film, and honestly, if you're out there listening and you watched this film and you really liked it, all the power to you, I guess. But I just, to me, and I'm a guest on this show, so I feel comfortable in saying this, but I feel like there's a particular subset of horror fans out there who will praise anything if they think that they can get some clout from it, or if someone will notice them because they praised a certain movie. I feel like I have standards and I have conviction, and I can very proudly say that I think Joe Begos is a hack. I'm sorry. I just think his movies suck. This is no exception. And you mentioned Terrifier 2. Terrifier 2 is not a perfect movie in my mind. I know, in terms of horror movies released this year, it is a highlight just because you can tell how much care and passion was put into the effects. The characters, they really try to make you invest in the characters of Sienna and her brother. And Lauren LaVare gave such a soulful performance. She's a badass. You care about her fate. She fights to the very end. She survives, and you get like an emotional feeling at the end because you feel it's a cathartic experience. That's what horror should be. It should be cathartic. There's nothing cathartic about this film. There's nothing redeeming about this film other than some neat practical effects, a cool looking robot that you don't see until the last, 15 minutes of the film. So, I mean, what's left really? What's left here? I'm getting angry.
No, I can tell. It's been a long time. You're getting red in the face. And, no one can argue the fact that, he didn't care that these characters were detestable. He didn't care that they were unlikable because they're not supposed to be. She's a final girl, dude. And those hero shots of her with blood all over her face in slow motion with those close-ups are clear indication that he was trying to make her a modern-day Sarah Connor, a new iconic final girl.
And also a final shot that rips off, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and plenty of other horror films. We've seen it all before. I mean, come on.
Well, Brian, I feel like we've kind of said enough on this thing. We got to get it to the little segment we do to review and get our rating on this. It's called Trash It or Treasure
Trash It. Oh, trash it. Trash it.
Before I even finished, you're already over here trashing it. Well, we've already given the reasons as to why, but I'm definitely going to trash this movie as well. I almost drove an hour to see this movie because, we work at Alamo Drafthouse. Alamo did not pick it up. And I understand, Violent Night came out. The Mean One was doing limited release. So there's a lot of stuff for people to watch right now. But I would not want
to subject this movie to an audience. I considered looking into booking this film, and we decided not to. There's a lot of holiday programming going on at the Alamo, and we ultimately decided not to pick it up. And now watching it, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't have an audience pay to go see this in a theater. I watched it on Shudder. I'm proud to have a Shudder subscription. We
love Shudder.
They're doing amazing work, and I feel like some people are praising this movie because they just love Shudder. They love Christmas horror movies, and they want this one to be great. It's not. It's not anywhere close.
No, it's not. And so, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. That is our review of Joe Begos' Christmas Bloody Christmas. A little side note, and I find this hilarious, and, this is nothing personal against anyone that helped make the movie. But there was a tweet that I was involved with regarding this movie where I commented it was a shame I wasn't able to make it out to see this because I didn't have the time to drive an hour. And the director of this movie literally commented to my tweet and said, "Do it. It's worth it." And sorry, but I would like to say that you're incorrect about that.
Well, there's certainly nothing wrong with a director being vocal on Twitter. We see James Gunn interacting with fans, and he's under a little bit of heat right now because he's essentially resetting the DC universe.
Don't even get me started on that, or we'll be talking for 35 minutes about that.
But he's being open and transparent on social media. He's interacting with fans. I think that's important, and especially for an indie horror film director. Wanting to, get his name out there and promote his movie, I think it's totally fine that he's,
I agree.
Listening to reviews and commenting on people's stuff. I think that's great. But, when your movie's not good, and, we're trying to be honest and we're trying to give, feedback. I would love to see Joe Begos direct a film that I actually like. Will I ever know that he directs a film that I would like? Probably not, because I don't know if I'll watch it at this point. He's 0 for 3. 0 for 3.
Well, this is the first movie of his that I've watched, and I'll be as honest as I possibly can about that. And I may watch VFW. I don't know at some point. There are just certain filmmakers that some of us don't connect with, and that whole my official tagline for this show that always has been, film is subjective, and as it is here, this one just didn't work for us. And I love to champion indie horror. I love champion anything that I have a passion for. I mean, I wish that I loved this movie, but not everything's going to be a winner. I would recommend, if you want to see an awesome, fun, bloody Christmas movie this season, go see Violent Night, which we did not review. But Brian, I already know what you think about that, but we're not going to go on any further about it. But go see that movie, enjoy the classics instead. And you know what? If you are that person that just says, fuck these epic film guys, fuck this brain stew show, I'm going to go watch it anyway. Just letting you know, don't say we didn't warn you. But thanks so much for listening, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to find us, we are literally everywhere on social media at Epic Film Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We do have a Patreon, which we're attempting to revamp right now. And the upcoming screenings that we'll be involved with for Alamo Drafthouse next month. Brian, what do we have? What's going on there? Isn't there a little movie we just announced happening for Friday the 13th? Yes, on Friday the 13th at Alamo Drafthouse, DC area, Ashburn. Friday the 13th, 3 in 3D. And I'll be extremely happy when this finally happens. We are going to be screening Killer Clowns from Outer Space on the 31st of January for Terror Tuesday, so be on the lookout for that as well. I always like to try to promote that stuff here, even though I know a lot of you live in the DMV, DC, Virginia area. But hey, if you are, or you're willing to make the drive, come on out and see us. I intro the movies, and it's an absolute blast. Great group of people to hang out with.
Yeah, I'm there every time, and it's an opportunity to get to hang out with us and tell us how wrong we are about Christmas, Bloody Christmas.
Yes, I always welcome these discussions. That's my favorite thing to do. If you love a movie I hate, or I hate a movie you love, that's my favorite thing to do. Too many people have issue with being able to talk these things out rather than just screaming at each other, like these characters did in this movie when they had a disagreement about a movie. You're supposed to be able to talk about it, debate. We all love movies. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Exactly. I mean, James Gunn getting death threats on Twitter. Like, come on now, people. Let's be civil. Let's be respectful, and don't yuck anybody else's yum, and vice versa. I mean, just
listen. Just drink your fucking eggnog.
Be respectful. Be excellent to each other.
Go put on Bing Crosby, or I'd prefer Frank Sinatra Christmas music, or even the August Burns Red Christmas albums, and just have a blast. Watch some great Christmas horror movies. And enjoy your season. If you like what you're hearing, please leave us a review on iTunes, or if you use Spotify, it's even easier, just a little 5-star thing. And until next time, I'm Justin.
I'm LoySauce.
And as always, we like to ask you to keep it creepy.